Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of And Now You Know with Bette and Julz. I'm Bette.
And I'm Julz.
And today we're going to be talking about life after divorce, love, loss, and lessons.
Big topic.
Big topic. We have a lot to
huge
say about this.
topic.
Yeah.
So you go first.
Okay, well, the first thing I'm going to say is that I really feel like when you're going through the divorce, things feel super scary and things feel like I remember feeling like my world was falling apart, something that was unexpected that I didn't want. And I just remember literally I wanted to die. Like I just remember the feeling.
I thought
Yeah.
I was going to die. Like
Yeah.
I literally, I was laying on the floor one day and I had to call my friend to come and get me and take me to the doctor.
Yeah.
I couldn't keep food down. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt so alone. It was so lonely.
It was. And I think the part for me is that I had never considered divorce. I had never considered what my life would look like if everything fell apart and when it's actually happening. And honestly, it is hard to breathe. It's hard to really understand it. And for me, it was during COVID. It was in the middle of the lockdown. My ex had moved away to a different state. And so here I am, in my house with the kids in the middle of a lockdown, and I'm homeschooling and I had a full-time job. And I instantly went into survival mode, and I just remember it was just hard to function, and I tried not to think about it. I just tried to move forward, and I know that I was able to compartmentalize it and just kind of stuff it in a box. But in the moments that I could go back to and realize this is my present reality, I just remember feeling it was so painful, and nobody can describe that. You can't describe it until you actually go through it. But what we want to talk about today is really not the pain in it. What we want to talk about is when your divorce is finalized and you're, after it, because there's a lot of messiness that happens during, and that's a different episode.
Yeah,
But
I don't even know if we have time for that one.
yeah, we don't, not today. But what we want to talk about is something really positive that we both discovered, and this is life after divorce, after it's said and done, after you are, out of the muck of it all.
Yeah.
Right?
After you're on the other side and you catch some glimpses of sunshine again.
Yes, I remember feeling so incredibly grateful. And literally, I am about a week away to celebrating my 5-year anniversary from the date that, that was signed, that the judge signed on the divorce decree. And it's now 5 years later. I mean, it's so crazy because I'm so grateful, and my life is so incredible, and I am somewhere where I never thought I'd be, but it's even better than I ever imagined.
Yeah.
So this is to inspire you. This is to anybody going through it, or anybody thinking about it, or anybody that's being hit with it out of nowhere.
Right.
This is to inspire you that we promise you it's dark and it hurts and it's painful and it flips your world upside down. But what is coming at the end of this is pretty damn awesome.
It's amazing if you give yourself time to feel what you're feeling.
Right.
And to remember that every single day that comes, you're one day closer to that point of being well.
Yeah.
But it's really important to not let that pain of loneliness and the change, because that's all it is. It's just change. And my favorite quote is, the price of progress is the pain of change.
Yes.
I got it right this time.
I
said it.
love that quote.
I've had to say that to myself so many times on my journey in this life. The price of progress is the pain of change. And what is it that you always say? If you don't choose to change.
Yeah. So whatever you're not changing, you are choosing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's true. So I think that the most critical thing that a person can do when they're going through the divorce is to let yourself feel what you're feeling and cry and journal. I got it. My therapist had me get a journal, and I wrote mine in prayer form. So it's really neat to go back to those journals now and read some of the prayers and to let my mind go back to those moments and see where I'm at today.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think I would ever get out of that pit.
Yep.
It was so terrible. Now, I was in a trauma bond situation in my divorce. And so I was really coming off of addiction also, because my therapist described it to me as being more difficult to get off of than heroin. And that's how I felt. I couldn't eat. I couldn't hardly move. And I had my kids at home with me still.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have the choice. I had to get up. I'm
Right.
glad that I had them. One of mine was gone off to college, but then I had my other two there. And
you had a little.
I had a pretty little, like 7 years old.
Yeah.
And he was a handful on top of it all.
Yeah.
Just because of where we had been, what our environment had been. And you've got to give yourself time to heal. And I mean, honestly, at least a year, maybe 2.
Well, so this is what I want to say to what she just said. For anybody that's in a trauma bond situation, I wasn't in a trauma bond situation, but it's still, very painful. But what I want to say is that, you hear all the time people say, well, if it's that bad, just get out. Yeah. And we have both from the experiences, the other people's experiences that I've learned about, I have a great deal of compassion for people in that position. And so it is important to know that it's a long road ahead of you, and you're not crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. No. You're not crazy. There is a tremendous amount of emotional damage and healing and all the things that has to happen. So it is absolutely like you're dying. That's true. That absolutely is true. And on the flip side, what I want to say is whether you're dealing with trauma bond or just a plain old breakup, or plain old divorce.
I've done that too.
Yeah.
So and it felt bad too in a different way.
But what is true for both situations or every other kind of situation, what is true is that first year is so important because, some people, of course, there's pain and there's tears and I journal too. And of course, remember, I had her by my side during my divorce. So she is now telling me all the things that her therapist had her do all those years before. So I felt like I had a level of preparation to step into my divorce, which, unfortunately not everybody has that, but we're hoping that with this, hopefully you don't go through one, but if you do, watch this episode again and hopefully it can help you. And during that first year, I did a lot of meditating. I did a lot of journaling. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of all those emotions and all those feelings. You have to feel them. Yep. You have to let yourself feel them. And the one thing that I was 100% committed to during that first year was to myself and to my kids. I was not interested in dating. I was not interested in distracting myself with whatever else, because remember, I'm homeschooling. I have these kids at home. I'm the only parent at the house at the time. And I knew I needed to feed my soul. I needed to, to uplift myself, and I had you to guide me through it. But that
I was
her
accountability partner.
Yes,
I really was, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm glad it's not.
I know
it's not
it's
yesterday.
crazy.
I'm glad it's 5 years later and we're here. But I remember telling Betty, it's important that you take this first year and get used to being with you and learn to love you and not anybody else. Don't give that to anybody else. You've been doing that for 20 years. And so I highly recommend that you have an accountability partner, whether that be your therapist or a good friend, and just put a box around yourself. And I'm not saying don't go out and have fun with your friends when you start feeling like it, but don't start looking for a love interest really quickly, because that kind of has some signs of codependency.
Right.
To me.
Right.
I did start dating Jay about a year after my separation, and I think that I probably still needed some more time. I was going to therapy, but the good thing about Jay is that neither one of us were in a rush. and he traveled all the time.
Yeah.
So
So you still had a little bit of space.
I still had that time to be alone. And, quite frankly, he was a little nervous about me because of my past and what I call my resume that wasn't
Right.
very flattering. And so he wanted to, we both were kind of waiting for the shoe to drop. And because we enjoyed each other's company so much that we both were like, is this real?
Right. And there's a
And-
little fear there because you
Well,
don't know.
And you need to give it like at least a year and a half for that euphoric stage to kind of simmer down. And then you start getting into the reality of life. And you need to go through all these, holidays. You need to go through the different scenarios that life throws at you.
Yeah,
with
I,
these people.
I
And
remember all the firsts. You're right. In that first year, you have to create a new normal.
Right.
And it is true, the first time that, the first day of school for the kids.
Yeah.
From this new, post-divorce situation, the first holiday post-divorce, the first birthdays post-divorce,
All of it.
my first, everything, all of it. So, now there's what actually worked out really, really wonderful for me is that after the pain, after going through kind of the yucky part of it all, but after going through that, my ex relocated back to town, back near us, and we were able to start talking again and start figuring out how can we do this together, even though we're apart, and we had no intention of getting back together romantically, but we did have a foundation. At least we were good friends.
Yeah.
We were.
Right.
And a lot of times I always say, like, we should have just been friends. We should have just been friends.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that romantically, we weren't it for each other, but I think that the base of friendship is what has allowed us to come back to a place of our kids are important. Let's do the right thing. We still care about each other. And so here we are 5 years later. We have a great co-parenting relationship. And the part that's really important is that even though in that first year you're in a lot of pain, when you have an ex that's also interested and committed into being a present parent, this is where I know you have something to say about this. So this is where it's really important for whoever the primary is, right? It's really important to set aside even though the marriage failed, even though the romantic part didn't work, remember that there's still a family unit and there are still children involved. And for me, I made sure that we made them first. And so, when it was time to figure out what kind of schedule we were going to have, what kind of arrangement we were going to have, I was wide open to sharing the kids because I feel like it is important. They need a dad. Every kid needs a dad.
Dads are more important than I feel like society gives them credit
Right,
for.
right.
And coming from a gal whose dad died when I was young, and then the destruction of just what it did to my soul,
Right.
losing him. Daddies are so important in boys and girls' lives, and just don't use your children as pawns to punish your ex, because if they're terrible people or whatever, your kids have the right to formulate their own opinion.
Yeah, and to have their experiences.
They will. And maybe dad's not that bad with the kids. He was just bad to you.
Right.
It was y'all. Right. It was y'all's chemistry. But I know that, well, my first husband, who is now passed away, he moved very far away. And I was young, and I actually was kind of relieved when he did that because I was a child hoarder. I wanted to have my son all to myself. Now, I did share him with his father. He went out in the summers, and then he was getting remarried, and my son was going out there. So I actually reached out to my son's future stepmom, and I just wanted to let her know that I wasn't the enemy. and that I wanted us to have a relationship because she was going to have my son.
Right.
And I wanted her to feel comfortable calling me. Well, it flourished into just an amazing friendship. And I loved her so much. She also passed away, just a really tragic story. But they lived in Vegas, and I would go to Vegas during the summers. And me and my wife-in-law, is what I called her, would stay in a hotel together and just go and have yummy dinners and massages and go see shows. And my first husband made us just these incredible arrangements, and he ended up kind of being like my brother.
Yeah.
And I just loved them so much. So it's possible to have an incredibly loving relationship with someone that you once were married to. Now I've got other stories with another,
that, not so much.
with another ex-husband who I choose not to talk to him anymore because he just can't, bless his heart, he can't get away from saying toxic things. And I had to put myself in a place to where I could love him from a distance.
Right.
Because I don't want that bitterness inside of me. I kept telling him, I can't keep forgiving you, but my faith system and my belief system tells me that I have to forgive. What is it? 44 million times. I mean, it's a never ending. You have to forgive, because if you don't forgive and you judge, then you're not forgiven, and then that's how you're judged. That's what I believe.
Yeah, but forgiving doesn't mean tolerating.
No,
that doesn't mean you keep yourself in the middle of it.
Doesn't mean you sacrifice. It doesn't mean. And so our son turned 18, and I was having a conversation with him, trying to co-parent, and I was asking him for some help, not money, just he and I talking about our son, who we both love.
Right.
And it always turned, and I said, oh my gosh, it just dawned on me that I don't have to talk to you about him anymore because he's all grown up. I can talk to him about him now. And I said, I am not going to talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
And I haven't.
Yeah. And I think, there are some cases where there's, abuse, whether it's physical or emotional or that kind of stuff. So, of course, take care of whatever situation you have at hand that in the best interest of the child. But in the case that I'm referring to, I saw that she had a great relationship with her ex, and she had told me about it. Mm-hmm. And I saw that she was able to have this, friendly exchange. And I think the kids are happier when their parents are happier. And this is actually, I have heard this before quite a few times. Kids thrive and they do best when their parents are happy, even if that means divorce.
I know.
So, I was somebody who grew up, my parents are still married, but my dad was gone from the age of 1 to 21.
He was unavailable.
He was unavailable. Mm-hmm. And so her dad died, but my dad was living, but he wasn't around. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I had a big void in my life.
Absolutely.
And so this is where we both absolutely believe that dads are important. They are important.
I read a book, and I think it's called The Daddy Shaped Hole in a Woman's Heart.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we are really trying to push here, is that learn what you need in a relationship and make sure that these men are hitting on all 4 cylinders and that they're available in all categories, physically, financially, emotionally, and spiritually, not just to you, but in your home with your children. And my husband now is 1,000% available,
right?
Not just to me, but also to his girls, to my boys, to our grandchildren. And it is such a beautiful thing for me to see my husband with his 2 daughters. It's almost like I get a view of what my life would have looked like, because I've got a sister, so 2 girls, and I get to see this incredible father with his 2 girls and what that looks like as adults, because I didn't get to know my father as an adult. But it's so fun to hear my husband talking to one of his daughters, and they are just laughing, and he gets off and he said, it's so much fun to talk to her. She makes me laugh, I make her laugh, and it's so it's just warm and fuzzy inside watching it.
Yeah, so if you're lost a little bit when she's talking about available and the 4 cylinders and the categories and all that, I'm going to say, sidebar, go back and watch a previous episode that's called The List. That'll give you some clarity about what she's talking about. And so in the past, when we were having children, when we, were married and having kids, we didn't know about these things.
No.
And so we have had experiences as daughters, but also as mothers
And
where
wives.
where the men weren't firing on all 4 cylinders
Yeah.
because we didn't know that. And so now I come from a place of why that is so important. But I'm going to go back to say that I had you as an example of how co-parenting in a positive way is possible. And then I had a friend from the Northeast who, I was still married at the time. I was probably 5 years before I even got divorced. But I remember this girl from the Northeast that I knew married this really good friend of mine, and he was a guy, and we went to high school together. And they got married, and I remember her telling me she got married really young to her high school sweetheart. They had a daughter, and it didn't work out, but they were the best of friends. And that was such an amazing example where everybody thought it was the weirdest thing. I thought it was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
And that, to me, gave me an example of it is possible, even though I didn't know that it was going to happen to me,
Right.
but I had an example, and then I had your example. So then now fast forward, now I'm co-parenting, and my ex and I do get along quite well. And when you talk about, she used to talk about her wife-in-law, which I thought was the most awesome thing. And so when my ex started dating, he was dating a girl who I really liked.
I know.
And I wanted her, they're no longer together, but
You wanted him to marry her.
I wanted her to stick around because this is where I think it's so important. This is where you love, you lose, but you still gain these valuable lessons.
Yep.
The loss of the marriage, but you still have the gain of new relationships. And what I learned with the girlfriend of my ex is that, I was never threatened by her. She wasn't trying to replace me. The way that I thought about it was, if more people want to love on my children, why wouldn't I be happy for that?
Right.
And so she had a completely different perspective as an outsider coming in, but she met my kids. She was so kind to my kids. She loved my kids. And for me, we started doing holidays and birthdays together.
Well, if
and
you're
I thought she was awesome. So she's my
yeah.
closest thing to. They
Yeah.
didn't get married, but like my wife-in-law.
It was hilarious because my wife-in-law would call me sometimes and she'd be like, "You are not going to believe what your ex-husband just did." And then we would be talking and I could hear him in the background talking. And she would go, "Are you stupid? How could you lose somebody like Julie? What is wrong with you?"
Yeah.
And it was just such a healthy situation for us. And I felt secure having my son go out there.
Right.
Because I knew that she was going to spoil him rotten.
Yep.
And he had such a limited time with his dad. I wanted it to be fun. I wanted them to just soak it all in. And, tragically, his father had a heart attack and died, 5 or 6 years, not in...
I think it was 2019.
19, yeah.
Yeah.
It was the beginning of 19. And then my wife-in-law also was suffering from cancer, fighting a battle for years, and she lost her battle with cancer in 2020.
Yeah.
So I lost them back to back. And then in the middle of that, my mom died. And it was significant. It was hard, and it's still hard not to. I still think of them still in Vegas, and but you can have such meaningful relationships with your exes.
Yes, you
and
can.
Their
Actually,
new
and it's
spouses, and it's fun.
It's fun, and it is in the most beneficial. It's in the best interest of everybody. So if you can get to a place, because here's
some of them you can't.
Some of them you
have
can't. That's
one
true.
that I can't.
That's true.
I
but
can't.
if you can, because here's my recommendation is that you are not forgetting about the pain, and you are not letting them off the hook or whatever.
No, you don't have to live with them.
And yeah, you don't have to live with them. And maybe you were the one that asked for the divorce, so maybe they're the ones that are in pain. You know what I mean? So whatever the situation was,
But it doesn't matter who asked for the
Right.
divorce.
It-
You
at
could
the
have
end of
asked
the
for the
day-
divorce, and you're still in pain.
right at the end of the day, the the marriage has come to an end. So,
Yeah.
okay, so that part
And that
is
just
done.
makes you feel like a failure. It's
Right.
going to make you feel
It
like a
absolutely
failure.
does.
So you're going to go through those steps.
Right. And after that, then it becomes your responsibility to decide how. This is what we talk about, choosing happy and
Yeah.
and yourself, and you want to come from a place of being happy, healthy, and whole, because how you decide to show up in the world post divorce is really important. You have to, now you're setting an example for your children. You're still setting an example for them, but now this is the next chapter of your life. And one of the things that drives me crazy when I see it is when whoever the primary parent is, sometimes most of the time it's the mom, but sometimes it can be the dad.
Yeah.
So what drives me crazy is when the primary parent is being a hoarder, Julz.
Yep, I was.
and doesn't want to share the children, and that is coming from a place of spite, and that is coming from a
is.
place of that's not.
You're
good.
trying to-
That's not good.
Yeah, you're trying to punish them by
Right.
and they, guess what?
But you're sacrificing the children.
You are but you're also, honestly, guys, if you are a single mom, single dad, and you've got this other parent who is capable, and guess
key.
what? They love that kid too.
Right.
You're not the only one. Give yourself a chance to have a moment, a weekend, a week, a Wednesday night dinner, whatever, for you to sit on the couch and eat hot dogs and drink milk. Do whatever you want to do. I don't care.
Disgusting.
It is. I didn't do that, but I threw the most ridiculous thing out there that I could.
Yeah.
Watch reruns of your favorite show. It doesn't matter. You don't have to explain it, but just for you to have some time to just decompress, and not have to worry about anyone but yourself because their dad is taking care of them.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I absolutely love my co-parenting arrangement. And the reason why I love it, I don't worry about when my kids are with their dad, I don't worry at all. He's their dad.
Right.
And he loves them and he will protect them. So I'm not concerned about
And
that
he's
at
a
all.
great cook.
And he's a great cook. So they eat better at his place than they do at mine anyway.
He makes this turkey salad that I have craved.
He's going to love to hear you say that.
I want some.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's true. He grew up in the restaurant business. He had a catering business. So he cooks way better than me.
Oh my gosh.
And my kids eat like kings and queens when they're over there at his house. So yes, that's true. But aside from that, they are safe.
Right.
And I've been over to that place and we've had dinners before all together and we've celebrated holidays and birthdays there. I know they're safe. I'm not worried about it. The part where we want to focus on for you is when you do have that time and the kids are safe and they're away, you shouldn't be home crying.
No.
You shouldn't. You should be creating and elevating the version of you for your next chapter. And for me, I picked up, actually reignited my love for salsa dancing.
Yeah.
And I started dancing again. And I started doing meditation and I started working out more and I lost 50 pounds in the process.
Yep.
And also with that, I started meeting new people and joining new groups where I was surrounded by like-minded people, people that just have this, they just want to have incredible lives. And so I started traveling more and new exciting opportunities. Like I said this in a previous episode, my life is so full and I love it so much.
Right.
But I learned all of this post-divorce. So this is to be encouraging and inspiring that, man, if you allow it to happen and you create an amazing relationship with your ex or whoever, whatever the situation is, and you give yourself the time and the space to love yourself enough to, it's okay for you to have a new life. It's okay for you to reinvent yourself, right?
Well, and if you don't do that, I'm just going to be real honest, guys. As you all know, I was married multiple times. I didn't really give myself a chance between those first marriages to heal and to understand myself. So by the time I got into my 40s, I knew that I had to do something because I was just, it was, that saying, sorry, I'm going to have a blooper here, bleep out, whatever, same shit, different day. Mine was same shit, different man, because I was bringing my crap into the relationship. And that's when I had to look in the mirror and realize that I was the common denominator
Yeah.
in the failed relationships. And I was dragging my kids through it. I was dragging my family through it. I was dragging my friends through it. It wasn't just me. It was having this deep rippling out effect on it really ripples out all over the world, because it's just the breakdown in the family institution. And if you don't give yourself, what we're talking about, a chance to heal, a chance, be lonely.
Yeah, it's true.
And it hurts.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to eat, don't eat. Okay? Get through it.
Yeah.
Just take the time, and it's going to hurt.
Yep.
Period. There's no way around it. Death and divorce are horrible things. And I quite frankly think that divorce sometimes is worse than
Yes,
death.
that is absolutely true.
Because it's a
you
choice.
Still have, yes,
Death
absolutely.
is not a choice. It's not a rejection. Divorce, you have lost, and you are feeling the rejection, because even if it was your idea, you're the one who wanted to get the divorce, there was a form of rejection in that relationship.
Yeah.
Because if it was good, you wouldn't leave it. You wouldn't leave it. I mean, I did not wake up one sunny morning and just say, oh, I'm done with this one. I want to get a divorce. Oh, I'm done with this one. That is not how it worked. There was so much pain on the inside of that marriage that got us to the day of, I'm done. I'm moving out. I'm filing. And until you get well, it's just a repeat. You're just you're just lugging that bag behind you and unpacking it in every single new relationship that you go into, if you don't give yourself this time to get well.
Yes, and I'm going to be really honest. That time is not 30, 60, or 90 days. It's not.
No.
I will tell you that, I have been now divorced almost 5 years. I've not remarried, right? I have dated, but I did not start dating. It was 14 or 16 months after my divorce that I even entertained the possibility to start dating. And then I did. And then I would take some breaks here and there. But I would also say that during that time, I worked a lot on myself. I went to therapy. I read a lot of self-help books. I absolutely was doing a lot of my own, kind of growth and development.
Yep.
And all of those things that were to feed my mind, feed my soul, help me to heal and to help me go into that next phase. So, and I'm also going to tell you that I did all that work, and I still felt like, I swear, it was not until probably the third year where I actually felt like I was like good. You know what I mean? Even though it's not that I wanted reconciliation or anything like that, but I had 20 years to unwind.
Yeah.
And so if you jump into a relationship, 6 months down the road or 9 months down the road, I don't think you've given yourself enough time. There's too much history. There's so much that you do have to kind of like
detox.
You have to detox it, and you have to heal it too,
Yeah.
because you can't just shove it all down when it's still all festering and negative and bitter and resentful. You can't just pretend like that doesn't exist
No.
anymore and move on to the next.
And
what
you will-
happens
you
is
will
you
t-
take it.
You take it
to the
with
next
you,
one.
and then you can start blaming a really nice person that might have great potential.
Yeah.
You start assuming.
Well, because you have all these open wounds
Right,
that you
right.
haven't taken care of. So absolutely. I mean, yes, I think 3-4 years is a really long time
is.
to wait.
I always say 1 year at least,
Yeah.
minimum.
But I'm just going to say that I did start dating after like 14, 16 months. But in the learning of it, I continuously was reflecting on the people that I was dating, the people that I was meeting. I was working on the list. I was refining it, all of that
She
stuff.
always had me to call.
Yes.
Yeah,
and while I was dating and
yeah.
stuff. So I'm just saying that like I didn't get to a place of like really feeling firm and whole until like 3 years later.
Right.
And
right.
so that you have to give yourself grace, and you have to give somebody else grace, and also the opportunity, like what you're saying. Don't bring your bag of shit and throw it on them.
No,
like
that's not fair.
If you're gonna go into a relationship, you have to be willing to have an open heart, and that means you might get hurt again.
Yeah.
You might get hurt again, and you might show up with things that you haven't cleaned up yet. and you have to be able to communicate through those things. So yeah,
And
I am a fan of giving yourself time.
Our time is wrapping up here, and what I'd want to kind of conclude this with is that if you know someone who is going through a divorce, please don't judge them.
Yeah.
Your feet have not been in their shoes. You don't know anything that went on in that home. Don't judge and pretend like you know that. Just call them and say, I heard the news. I'm so sorry. I love you. Let me know if you want to come over for dinner. Embrace them. Give them a hug because they are feeling very lonely.
Yeah.
And they don't need anybody to make them feel bad. They already feel bad.
Yep.
I promise you, they feel bad. They are hurting so badly. So just love them.
Yep. I will tell you that one of our dear friends, the person who introduced Julz to me, she was, aside from Julz, another pillar for me during my divorce. And she had gone through a divorce herself.
She and I went through our divorces together.
Oh, you did? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Yep.
didn't know that.
Yep.
But she was so loving and so supportive and so helpful. And she would just call me to check on me. And she would send me letters in the mail and cards and thinking of you. And she sent me a book to read. And I just remember I would spend hours on the phone with her.
Yeah.
And she was just loving on me.
She's one of our quarters.
She is one of our quarters. And I love her. And
We love you.
I
You
love,
know who you
love,
are.
You know who you are. I love her so much. I loved her before this. I loved her before
Oh,
this because
right.
I had worked
Oh,
with
yeah.
her. You know, I loved her before, but that's when she, I think for me, like she solidified her place in my heart when... I'm getting a little emotional.
No,
Okay,
that's what
moving
this
on.
does.
Moving on from that. Anyway, yeah, I love her. I love her. Yeah.
Yeah, she and I went through our divorces together. And then one of my other quarters, she just came over every night and just was there with me.
Yeah.
And we drank and we smoked. And,
Yeah.
and she went through a divorce too, so she knew what it was like. And
See, this goes back to that, you know, your quarters. If you haven't watched, well, the quarter episode hasn't come out yet.
Oh.
But I'm not sure of the order of this, but
we have an episode called Quarters in 8 Minutes. And
yeah,
it's
but
really good.
4 quarters and 8 minutes, and it's really good. So I'm not sure if that's going first or if this one's going first. But if you're watching this episode and you haven't seen that one, watch that one because that tells you the importance of identifying the people in your life that are your safe place, judgment-free zone, the people that you know that you can cry to, that you can spill your guts to, that, you know, where you know that you can rest your head and feel safe.
Well, and they kind of become what we refer to as your board of directors because they can see warning signs of maybe you're getting ready to be in that dating world again, and you just want that. We all look through rose-colored glasses and we make excuses and we overlook, and that's why we get into these messes, and then we end up getting a divorce. And it's just have your wingman,
Yep.
your wing woman.
Yep.
Just have
You
that.
need your people. It's too hard to do it alone.
It is.
Honestly, it's lonely already, right? Because you're trying to navigate this whole new world and this whole new life, especially parenting and all that, and you're doing it by yourself, and no one signs up to do that alone.
Yeah, I
So,
remember.
you know?
I remember talking to my mom, and I was like, "What if I'm alone for the rest of my life?" And she said, I know that if you're alone for the rest of your life, that's because you're choosing to be alone. And that is a good place to be.
That's a great place to be.
Choosing to be alone.
Yeah.
So get to the place where you would choose to be alone, then choose to be alone with someone.
Yes.
Because being alone with someone is much lonelier and more painful than being alone all by yourself.
And by the way, all that is a really big Band-Aid.
It is.
Because you still haven't healed. You still haven't addressed that big thing. And, you know, loneliness is not a good enough reason to jump into a relationship.
No.
So, oh my gosh, please, 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 if you learn nothing else from this episode,
Right.
be alone and absolutely love it
Yep.
rather than being alone in a relationship and still suffering from loneliness and pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say that when Jay goes out of town, I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I think sometimes he gets his feelings hurt because I'm not crying or something when he's gone, but I'm always glad when he comes home too. So, but being all by myself is a beautiful thing. So do yourself a huge favor. Give yourself the gift of you.
Yes.
because
of
you're going to
you.
find out that you're pretty cool to hang out with.
Yep.
And then somebody else is going to find you pretty cool to hang out
Oh
with.
my gosh. And when you find that place where you just like, I totally love myself and I know she loves herself. And I think this is why, you have better relationships when you come
do.
from that place, not just romantically like her and her husband, but like you have better friendships too,
do.
because we show up whole
Yep.
because we love ourselves.
We don't want to spend time on bullshit.
Yeah, it's true. We don't. We don't.
No.
And on that note,
Yep.
thank you so much for joining us. We so support all the love and your time watching us. And please tell people about us so that they can continue to watch and grow with us. We are relatively new. We are dropping our new episodes every Monday, so please keep an eye out for them. And if you
Pretty
have,
exciting
It
because
is,
we're
it's so
almost to
exciting.
10 episodes.
We are. I think this is our. Is this our ninth or is
Ninth
this our
or 10th.
Yeah,
I don't know, but it's really cool. We're having so much fun.
We're having so much fun. So if you have any questions or comments or feedback, or if there are specific topics where you want to kind of get our take on it or whatever it is, you can either drop a comment down below or you can shoot us an email. Our email address is hello@bettyandjulz.com, BETTE.
And JULZ.
And so
We've got
we love it. We're having so
such
much fun.
Big plans.
We do.
Beyond just this YouTube channel and podcast, and we're just excited we are enjoying the journey.
We are. We're
This
enjoying the
is-
journey. We want to help you enjoy the journey too.
This is a dream of mine, and it's a dream of Betty's, and
It took us a few years to get here.
It did, and it was so interesting. Yesterday, I was telling Betty, I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I literally felt the Holy Spirit tell me, because I've had some in another lane of my life trying to make a decision on what to do, and the Holy Spirit told me, do whatever you've got to do to make sure that you keep this dream going. I know for a fact that this is exactly where we are supposed to be.
Yep. Absolutely. We've talked about it for years and things have unfolded in such an amazing way. And so I'm super thrilled. I'm super happy. We have really big plans. So we want
So
you to join us
exciting.
on the ride.
We do. We
Yeah.
do. We have big plans. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Thank you for
now,
joining us.
Jay wants us to end this by saying, and now you know. And now you know.
Okay, and now you know. Okay.
Love y'all.